Good morning. Good morning. So I want to thank everyone for coming to the candidate forum to hear from our candidates for 2018 election to vestry and our convention delegate. First, my name is Ann Lubenow. I had the honor of serving as the chair of the nominating committee this year. A number of our members are here, and I'd really like to thank them. I think that the committee did a really good job putting together a very esteemed and established slate of candidates for the parish. So I'd first like to thank Kevin Keyhouse, oh, there he is, and Meredith Myers, Peter Plocky, John Ross, who's not here, and Lee Walsh, who there she is. So the good news is if you're happy with the candidates, thank them. If you're not, blame me. So what we're going to do today is you'll first hear from the vestry candidates. We'll run through in order. They'll introduce themselves. You should have gotten in Crossroads brief bios of folks. There's also some supplemental information from some of the candidates if you're interested. We'll run through people, having a chance to introduce themselves to each of you, and then we'll flip to the delegates. They'll do the same thing, and then hopefully we'll have a few minutes for questions if folks have them. So let me also just mention process. You see we have 9 candidates for vestry that will be on the ballot next week. There are actually 6 vacancies on the vestry coming up for 18. That's the typical 4 3-year terms. There's 1 2-year term and 1 1-year term. So the way that'll work next week by people who are much more steeped in the bylaws of the church than I am is that candidates will be assigned to the terms based on the number of votes they receive. And if you recall, if you've been here a few times, it's likely that we'll have a series of ballots because there's a requirement that that each candidate receive a majority of the votes available to them in the election. So given our slate of 9 highly qualified candidates, I suspect we might have a series of ballots to elect a vestry. So your patience next week will be appreciated. So let me just run through quickly and introduce you to the folks behind me and then turn this over to them. And actually, we put the wardens to the side. And they will also, they'll kick it off. So we have Jonna Story running as our senior warden, John Stewart, our junior warden. And then our candidates for vestry include Nancy Adams, Julie Andrews, Paul Beatty, Sean Craig, Ann Core, Mark Edwards, Rob DeSoqui, Ellie Sullivan, and Suzanne Welch. And so now I'll get out of the way and let them tell you about themselves. And I'll start with Nancy. Oh, no, sorry, I'll start with Jonna. Sorry.
Pushed aside to sit, I get pushed aside to talk. Hi, I'm Jonna. I think I know everyone, I hope. I hope over the past few years as junior and senior warden, I've gotten to know a lot of you well. I was talking to someone, I was talking to the new senior warden at Redeemer yesterday, and she asked, wow, you've been in service for a really long time, and I get so much out of it, which is why I do it. So a lot of people think it's so overwhelming and so much to do, and at times it is, but at times it's not, and it's so life-giving to me to be serving St. John's in this way. So I appreciate all of your support over the past 3 years and look forward to one more year of support as we go forward. Thanks.
Hi, I'm John Stewart. I've served as the junior warden for the last year, and I just want to say how impressed I am with how much work Jonna does, and I'm daunted as a result of that. But I guess having served on the vestry for 2 years and then been involved as junior warden, I want to say what an incredible body the vestry is, because we live by the proposition that each member has a need to express his or her view about things and to engage in this process of making decisions, which are sometimes difficult, but it's a very, very interesting and rewarding experience. From my perspective, what I'd like to help happen over the next years is that we engage members of the parish as well in hearing views of people, of parishioners, about what they would like to see in the parish, because that's the way the vestry can get its job done the best.
Thank you. I'm Nancy Adams. I'm a relatively new member. Can you hear me now? A relatively new member of St. John's. I've been inspired from the very beginning by this community. I was particularly seeking community, but I found so much more than that here. I really am inspired every day by the work of the people of this community, the commitment to living faith and action. That has been an important part of my life, particularly at this stage of my life, to try to do more for community and in community. And I'm inspired every Sunday by Sari and by all of you who support him. And I've decided that I'd like to do more to help the church community going forward. So my point really is faith in action and encouraging people to demonstrate that faith as they feel appropriate, and to let 1,000 flowers bloom here. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Julia Andrews, and I'm a long-term member of St. John's. And most of you probably know me as an organizer. I organize a lot of things. I started out with Shepherd's Table and rummage sales and book sales and women's shelter efforts. And I'm still doing that. And I've been chair of the outreach committee, and most recently I helped draft the charter to make the outreach committee a new standing committee of the vestry, which I'm really excited about. I'm primarily interested in running for the vestry because I would like to help increase lay leadership and raise that up and increase the flow of lay leadership in the community. And I am excited also about the increasing profile of outreach in St. John's community, and would like to help shape that. And that's about it. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Paul Beatty, and I've been coming to St. John's for 18 years. Started with the wedding of my wife Lindsay and I, which was certainly a spectacular beginning. And it got better from there, actually. Well, I shouldn't say better from there, but many positives kept us coming back, beginning with a newcomers class that really kind of transformed the way I thought about Christianity, because it wasn't about what you have to believe to get into the club or to be accepted. It welcomed ambiguity and encouraged questions and valued different perspectives looking at things. And that led to other learning opportunities that were really about taking these old words and sacred scriptures and figuring out what do they mean for how we should live our life today. That was very powerful for me. That wasn't Christianity as I had experienced it really growing up, and I'd never been a part of an adult, a member of a Christian community. So that sort of openness and willingness to look at things differently, to embrace differences in perspective, is really kind of the backbone of my commitment to St. John's. You know, in a world where there are just so many experiences where there are one way to look at things, that's very refreshing and worth nurturing. I have been very enthusiastic about building more of those opportunities here. I worked on the Adult Forum Committee for several years and was really proud of the programs we put together with Carolyn Pierce and Ann Wake. Some of it was a little bit intellectual and theological even. Some of it was more spiritual. Some of it was really practical, things you can use on a day-to-day basis. caregiving, for elder care, and again, community involvement. That led to some work on the vision team a year or two ago, where we talked about healthier and holistic relationships and what are the barriers to them, whether that's unmet needs in the community or even rancorous political debate, and talked about, well, what can we do as a community to address that and to build something more. I want to keep doing more of that, and I think nurturing St. John's requires a lot of very careful stewardship of our resources, both human and financial. In my day-to-day life, I'm a division director at the Census Bureau, and I lead a very diverse group of social scientists. I bring to that day-to-day life the core values of St. John's all the time, recognizing the value of diverse perspectives, keeping morale up by recognizing the contributions that every individual makes, even if they're different, and the dignity of every person. Along the way, I've also learned, I think, quite a bit about financial management, keeping in line with goals and core values, strategic direction, and I think that maybe some of those lessons could be useful to St. John's. In short, I'm just ready to give more. I've gotten a lot from this community. I'd be delighted to have the opportunity, and I thank you for considering me. Thanks.
My name is Sean Craig. I just want to say I'm very impressed with all the other candidates here, and just want to perhaps say what I bring that's sort of particular to me, and you can decide what you think the right balance is. But I've come to St. John's for over 30 years. I've seen the different rectors come and go. I've seen the church evolve, and I think what I see now is really marvelous. I think also as we grow into the church, we begin to appreciate much more what St. John's has to offer in terms of community, in terms of a refuge from the world out there where things seem to be going wrong, and you need to find a group of people who you can really share a vision with. And my vision as a Christian came from my father. My grandfather was born in England. My grandfather was a minister, an Anglican minister. And so I appreciate sort of the Christian tradition and the sort of sense of openness and sort of toleration and for other people's views. And I think in St. John's, the direction we're going in terms of bringing people into the church and really exchanging views is something that I value very highly. And I feel that on the vestry, my role would be to really try and listen to people, listen to different views, understand what is the common ground, what we share, and find in what we share a way forward. So that's what I bring, and thank you very much for coming, and I'll pass it on now to my next.
Hi, I'm Ann Kaur, and I am a 5 p.m. come as you are person. I'm very pleased to be here at the crack of 10 this morning. Because I know some of you from events, and some of you, because sometimes you dabble in the 5 o'clock, or I've seen you on Easter when I do come in the morning. But I thought I would just tell you why I came to St. John's, some experience that may be relevant, and then building on Sari's sermon from a few weeks ago, what my mantras are, so that may help you discern whether you think I'm one of the right people at the right time here. Because as Sean said, I think everybody here has something to give. It's just a question for everyone to discern who are the right people for right now. I've been at St. John's for about 5 years. And the lightning bolt's coming down. I was Catholic and was looking for a more inclusive community, and I had a friend who was Episcopalian who said, "You should come to my church." it's like being Catholic, but you can believe whatever you want. So her church did not have a 5 p.m. service, and I had seen the sign here for many years, and I thought, oh, they've got a late afternoon one. So I came here and enjoyed the service, went to someone in my office who I knew went to St. John's and had been on the vestry and said, Harry, I thought you went to St. John's. I went to a service there, and it just didn't really seem like you. And he said, why? I said, well, I went, and we did the readings, and we passed around a microphone and said what we thought about the homily. And he said, what service did you go to? I said, 5 p.m. He said, oh, I've never been. So I like that we have so many different traditions here so that everybody can find a place where they feel comfortable. I think the message of St. John's in the bulletin that we are single, we are married, we are divorced, we are empty nesters, et cetera, is really what called me here. In terms of experience, I have participated in a variety of events at the church. I've worked with the communications committee and now seem to have by osmosis become a member of the communications committee. I'm going on the Holy Land trip in a couple of weeks, so looking forward to that. Experience other places. I've served on a couple boards. I've been the treasurer of my professional society, and I've also been a staff member supporting boards, so I know the other side and all the work that goes into making sure that the cogs run smoothly. In terms of my personal mantras, I'm not sure either of them is really relevant, but I thought they would be helpful. As Sari was saying, that's the kind of thing that they'll say about us afterwards. My first is to sort of paraphrase the author David Rakoff, which is, it's not a sin not to be funny, but it is a sin not to have a sense of humor. And my other is have courage and be kind, which I thought was mine, but I think is actually from Cinderella the movie. But, because when I look at my life, the only times I really regret is when I wasn't fearless or when I wasn't as kind to somebody as I should have been. So that's sort of me in a nutshell for those of you who I haven't met before. And I'll look forward to seeing you next Sunday at the annual meeting when I will again be up early to be here. So thank you.
Good morning, everybody. This is probably the first elevator speech for the vestry that I've ever given, but with 2 or 3 minutes, I'm going to try to cram a lot of information into this. My wife, Catherine Kreil, who's sitting in the back, and I have been coming to St. John's for the past 2 years. We love it. It's a wonderful parish. We sing in the choir, senior choir, and enjoy that too. I have been thinking a lot over the past 6 months about how I can give more to the parish, and that's really why probably everyone else up here, I really think that a church is about service and really improving that across the board. When I put together the very brief overview that's in the newsletter, I thought about what you would need to know about me and the kind of skills that I could bring to this position. One of the 2 most important things. First, I have, believe it or not, over 4 decades of experience in leadership, management, administration, worked with many boards and commissions across the board, and I think that certainly could be brought to bear. More importantly, I've actually served on another Episcopal Church vestry before. So I've been there, I've kind of done that. I think I have some skills that were developed out of that that could be brought to bear here. I want to mention 3 things that came out of that, because again, I think they're germane. I chaired a special committee that looked at how that church's columbarium could be better preserved and protected and expanded to meet future needs. More importantly, our church was my former church was going through some difficult times, and I was asked by the rector 3 or 4 years ago to put together a what went wrong report. And this report really looked at relationships between the rector, staff, vestry, and the parish to determine what might be done to rectify those problems and challenges. I brought my EFM training into that, and I think it helped shape the final report. A number of the recommendations in that report were then brought to a special governance committee, which I served on, and implemented. I'd very much like to continue service here. It's a wonderful parish, warm and inviting. Because I'm probably the newest member of the group before you today, I've actually prepared an expanded overview of my personal history and why I think I'd be someone that you should consider. And appended to the back of that is actually something that is out of a business training analysis of core values and traits. And I'd ask you to take a look at that. I think they would become useful if I were elected. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Robert DeSoki. My wife, Mary Jane Hines. Can you hear? Oh, can you hear me now? Okay, my wife, Mary Jane Hines, and I have been attending this parish for about 4 years. We're attracted to it because of its inclusiveness and its community outreach. Our journey started really in London, the Episcopalian journey for us. We were out there on a trip with our son, and it was Palm Sunday, and we went to St. Paul's Cathedral. And we just fell in love with it, especially my wife, because she had never seen, we come from the Catholic tradition, and there are no Catholic women, or no women who are priests. So she saw a woman in the altar, and she was just, we were just flabbergasted by that. So when we came here, we only lived 2 miles from the parish. We walked over, I remember one Sunday, and lo and behold, we saw John Merton, and he knows this story. We said, well, we're Catholics. And he said, well, we're just like Catholics, but without the guilt. So he made us feel right at home. Thank you, John. My work at the parish has been mostly voluntary. I volunteer for the outreach program that my wife put together for the parish, which is to bring breakfast to Bethesda Cares. It's a program that she put together a couple of years ago, and I try to help out as best I can. I was also a Eucharistic minister at another parish, and I was also an English teacher for undocumented immigrants, again, at another parish. Here, why do I want to be in the vestry? A couple of things. I think I can help with the finances. I do understand the budget process very well. I've been working at the Federal Reserve for over 20 years, and I've worked on a lot of budgets, big budgets, small budgets, anywhere from little budgets to allow people to travel through to different conferences to large budgets that we use at the Federal Reserve to purchase financial data and protect it and encrypt it and so on. So I think I have some of those skills that I can bring to the vestry and help with the financial process. And I also have some ideas as to how to perhaps bring in revenue. But I think the most important thing, the most important reason why I'm up here is that I really want to work with the vestry to help St. John's become a sanctuary parish for undocumented workers. And maybe that process is still going on. Maybe somebody's already started that process, but as you know, the Episcopal Diocese of Washington has declared itself a sanctuary diocese. And I think we as a parish is very consistent with our vision statement that we can also follow suit and we can provide services to the undocumented community here in Bethesda Chevy Chase. And I would like to work with the vestry to come up with a plan that identifies exactly what we are willing to do. What kind of services are we willing to provide? Safe haven, legal services, maybe financial services to help this community, which is large here in Bethesda Chevy Chase, and maybe help them to obtain legal status or keep them from being deported. And it's a huge community. They're the construction workers in downtown Bethesda. They're the nannies who live in Chevy Chase. They're the domestic workers, and they're living in fear in this political environment that we have right now. A lot of them are even afraid of leaving the house or reporting a crime. If they report a crime, go to the police, they can be arrested and deported. So I think we as a parish have a lot of resources to provide. I think half the people here are lawyers. Legal resources, financial resources to help this community, provide them with advice, help them to perhaps obtain legal residency here in the United States or protect them from being deported. So that's really very important. And if I do not get elected to the vestry, I would still like to continue that as an outreach program for the parish. I think that's very important. And then the third thing is I want to continue to work with the vestry that continues to support Sari. I want to make sure that he has all of the financial resources and the staffing that he needs to continue to provide great leadership that he has been throughout the years. I'm not going to be a rubber stamp, but I want to be there for him to make sure that he's got all of the resources he needs to do a good job. Okay? Look forward to working with you, and God bless.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ellie Sullivan, and from hearing everyone speak, it seems like the thing I offer is church school experience. I'm all about the church school. So I, in fact, came to St. John's a little before Sari started in 2010. After searching for a church home, I, thank God, remembered that as a very little girl I attended St. John's. My memories of the church school experience here were really strong, very visceral. I remember the taste of snack, the combination of graham crackers and apple juice. I remember my church school teacher's name, Mrs. Kinney, and I remember I used to run into her at Safeway and be thrilled that she knew who I was, and I loved her so much. I remember good memories with my mother and my sister up in the balcony, kind of giggling when things got too quiet down there in the service. So I just know what an effect church school has on us. It was my spiritual foundation. The songs I sang, the pictures I drew, but really it was the feeling of being loved and accepted as a little girl that brought me back here. So I think that's what we have to offer as a parish, one of our strengths. And I'm an occupational therapist at Holy Cross Hospital. I work one-on-one with patients all day long. I think one of my strengths is being able to listen, to be able to really, to value maybe minority voices sometimes, to draw out the strengths in each individual, and to help create an environment where people feel safe and loved and able to grow. I think that's what, every time I've had an opportunity to serve here, I have experienced that, and I would love to see that continue on. That's it for now. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Suzanne Welch, and I want to apologize in advance that a couple of us, Sean and I and Mark, may have to step out for the next service, or there won't be any ushers, and they'll be short a choir member. I have started at the 9 o'clock service for 15 years, where my kids and I attended, while John has always sung at the 11:15. Now I'm attending the 11:15 with him, but the 9 o'clock experience was during the time when we started Right 13 and J2A, and I saw those wonderful programs launched and flower and blossom, and the kids in those programs grow and mature. We have a great J2A program. In my day job, I am a vice president at a nonprofit, so I see governance there. I deal with construction, financing, and budget, which is probably why I'm currently serving as co-chair of property with Lucas Snyder, and my other recent lay leadership has been in a co-convener of the Holy Land Committee. So while many churches are shrinking, St. John's is growing, we all know that. But it doesn't grow on its own without plan and effort, and a concerted effort from the vestry. And governance is what the vestry is one of the hallmarks of what the vestry needs to do to help the parish grow and thrive. So the three things I would like to focus on, if elected, though there's a lot of wonderful candidates here, is I would like to help lay leadership expand and grow. This church has always been strong in its lay leadership, and that is its great foundation. I'd like to help with that. I'd like to make sure St. John's continues to be a welcoming physical plant so that programs continue to operate here and people can worship here and have spiritual experiences here. And I'd like to support St. John's so it is fiscally, that's with an F, sound. And that doesn't happen without a great deal of concerted effort. And without the financial foundation, we couldn't operate the wonderful programs that we operate, but we also want to operate more. And to do that, we need to be get more pledges in and be more physically sound. And I'd like to help with that, and I have some experience with that. I think I am last, so I want to thank all the other candidates and give this back to Ann.
So thank you. We'll come back to the vestry candidates in a minute, but let's take a minute and hear from our candidates for delegate, and we'll start with Margaret Hilton.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Margaret Hilton, as you just heard. Now, I'm assuming you've all done your homework, which means you've read my brief bio, so I don't need to go into all that. But what I realized after I sent in my brief bio was that I forgot to mention that I have been a delegate to diocesan convention in the past. So I guess you could call that a qualification. And the one thing I do remember about being the delegate was, and at the time, I think this was when Jay Everhart was my co-delegate, was that after the convention, we reported back to all of you. We had an adult forum to report on the convention. And so I have a platform. If you should elect me, I will definitely report back to you, either here at an adult forum, or I can write an article in Crossroads. I could speak to the vestry, but I would be very interested in sharing with you, because a lot of issues do come up at diocesan convention, issues that are of national and international scope, and I think it's important that we don't just go to convention, vote, and then that's the end of it. So I'll report back. Thank you. Peter?
Yeah, Peter?
Good morning. I'm Peter Plocky, and first, one of those, in the interest of full disclosure things, you may notice that there are two people who are running for delegate who are also on the nominating committee. And you're probably thinking, well, that's a neat trick. I do want to assure you that neither Kevin nor I were involved in the deliberations that led us here to the podium this morning. I want to say first a little bit about the position, which a parishioner came up to me this morning and said, well, what is this delegate thing all about? And as Margaret indicated, we are delegates to the diocesan convention, which deals not only with diocesan business such as the budget, but also with larger issues. This year, for example, they dealt with the diocese as a sanctuary diocese, and with transgender issues as well. And you also attend something called the Regional Assembly, which is an assembly of representatives from each of the regions of the diocese that deals with similar issues. That happens in the fall. If you read my bio, you'll know just briefly that I did spend time on the vestry here at St. John's, and have also been involved in a lot of outreach matters. And I think those two things in particular will help inform my work as a delegate. The vestry work, of course, with respect to church governance, and it was a very interesting time on the vestry in which we, among other things, selected our current rector, and I really learned a lot about listening to my fellow vestry members, working by consensus, and being guided by the Holy Spirit. And in my outreach work, I've, in addition to being on the committee here, done a lot of work with one of the nonprofits that we support. And the diocese really is a very outward-looking diocese, and much of the work that the diocese does is outreach, essentially. So I expect those issues to come up in my work as a delegate. So I would very much look forward to and appreciate being able to represent the parish as a delegate and work with my fellow delegates in informing you all of what is coming before the diocese and reporting out to you after those events. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Kias. I've been at the church now for 5 years with my family. My wife is Catherine here. My oldest is Thomas, 18. We're still figuring out if he gets to vote, I think, this year. But I'll be stepping off of the vestry next week. So it's been a wonderful time to serve on the vestry, and I'm just very impressed with the candidates that are here. It's remarkable to see. I feel honored to be able to stand amongst the four as delegate candidate. I see our church as a church whose goal and whose purpose is to stand in the gap. We are in a position where we physically see ourselves being in between conflicting views often, and we're in a society where we see conflicting views all the time. I believe our church is called to serve as another way and a way to bring people together. I appreciate what Rob said about refugees and illegal immigrants. I think the position of the delegate as a representative is one to bring to mind the goal of the church, and our goals are lofty, but also to report back as well as to stand as a voice in the diocese. And we have two positions in the diocese, and I think that is both an honor to our church and the fact that we have the ability to make changes, and we have the ability to bring that voice to a level of the Episcopal Church that is seen with honor within the country. And I'd love to serve in that position too. Thank you.
So there's a fourth candidate for delegate who unfortunately was not able to join us for today. So for those of you who missed it in Crossroads, Becky Neal is also running for consideration for delegate. And Becky has been a regular member at St. John's for 8 years. Belonging to this community has brought her great joy and comfort. She has served on the vestry and have found the participation in a group of faithful, thoughtful, and committed individuals to be inspiring. She was also part of the vision process in our community's effort to look outward. As part of the Norwood Ringers Bell Choir, Becky enjoyed the challenge of learning a new skill and being part of a small group of interesting and talented folks. In her day job, Becky is an attorney working at the Office of Disciplinary Counsel, investigating and prosecuting attorneys for violations of their professional ethics. Her involvement at St. John's brings a richness and depth to her life that she cherishes, and she would be honored to represent St. John's as one of the lay delegates to the Diocesan Convention. So I encourage all of you to look back at Crossroads from this past week, where you can read the bios of all these wonderful candidates. And before we take questions, I just want to take a moment to have everyone really acknowledge the tremendous gift that these folks are all bringing to us. I wish we could elect them all. So, yes. Oh, you're going to, yes.
I'm sorry, taking senior warden privilege. Just hearing from all of these candidates is so impressive. I am sure you all are as impressed as I am. There's a big debate, should we have more on the slate than positions we need? And, this argues that, yes, we should. I didn't feel that way in the past. But I also want to say, before we lose our 11:15 folks, that obviously you can do the math. We can only elect 6 of these 9 really talented folks. This isn't the last you've seen of them. And, we will plug you all in. The fact that you're willing to serve on vestry shows that you're also willing to serve in other capacities. So if you don't get elected to vestry, and many of you have already, so, but if you don't get elected to vestry, it's not because you're not qualified. side, obviously hearing from all of you, you are. It's about having the right people at the right time. And so I just want to say thank you all in advance, and you can expect a phone call later to figure out where we can really utilize your talents as a parish. So now.
So we have a few minutes, and we might even be able to keep our 11:15ers if there are any questions from the parish for any of our candidates. Oh. I guess we only have one mic, so I'll meet you in the middle.
Okay. The question is for the vestry candidates, and if you could briefly talk about maybe one thing that you think is working really well in the parish that you'd like to build on, and one thing that needs some attention and how you would address that. And I realize that could be really, really long, but
Don't be.
I mean, yeah, don't be.
All right. We'll just, 11:15, yes. We'll start here and work down.
I'd say the one thing that's working very well is we are growing, we are opening and welcoming, and people see that, and that's one big thing in our growth. And I think we need to continue to do more of that and find realms in which we can do that. And the other thing, the one thing I think we need to work on is the financial soundness of the parish. More people need to pledge. It's not your neighbor on this side or your neighbor on this side. We all need to pledge more and give financial support, and we need to manage the budget of the parish so we can pay all of its needed expenses.
Hi, the church school works really well. We're in the process of finding a new leader for the church school. I'm happy to be on that search committee and to help discern the right person for that. I think that the pilgrimage is a little bit, not controversial, but there are some different feelings in the parish about the J2A pilgrimage for the kids, the 11th and 12th graders, or 10th and 11th. That some people have feelings about that the parents who have kids who've gone through it, just like myself, think it's a wonderful program, life-changing for the children. There are some people who feel like the way we do it might need a little tweaking to stay aligned with our values as a church. So it's an opportunity for discernment. But I gotta say, I'm pro-pilgrimage, so.
Well, I'd like to emphasize more like online donations when we pledge. Oh, can you hear me now? Okay. I think that's really something that we really need to emphasize. But there are some issues with that, as John Merton knows. Every time you do an online donation, the processing fee, the parish pays the processing fee. So if you donate $1,000, maybe $950 of it goes to the parish, and the other $50 goes to Visa or whatever. One of the things that we can do is maybe we can redesign the system to allow the donor to check a box to actually give them the option to pay the processing fee. I think that would make it a little more easier and more convenient to pay online. I think this whole process of writing a check and putting it on a chalice at the end, during Mass or service, is really something that is somewhat inefficient. I think we really, need to emphasize more online transactions stuff. Yeah.
In terms of what I think works well, I'm incredibly impressed by the church's outreach efforts. My wife and I were really attracted to St. John's because of all of the good work you're doing, especially with refugee families, helping to put together housing and furniture for folks like that. I think all of the above, we need to do more of that for sure. In terms of what could bear improvement, as the other candidates have already talked about, finances are the key. Your policy is driven by the dollars you have, and it's really important, I think, to try to involve as many current parishioners in the activities of the church. I tend to think that that's a way to increase donations over time. I'm a good example of that, where I significantly increased my pledge from last year to this year.
You know, you can set up auto pay from your bank so that they don't have to pay the processing fee. You can just have them send a check every couple weeks. I think what's working. Oh, well. I think what's working is the welcoming nature of St. John's. An area that I'd like to see us do more is providing opportunities for people to talk about their faith. The question series that Sari did earlier this year was really great. I find that we have lots of opportunities to do things together, sort of helping people, which ultimately is the big thing, but maybe the interim step is providing forums for us to talk about our faith and our religion and how we feel about God, and sort of building the here's why we're called to do these other things. So I would like to see a little bit if we can expand on what we're already doing on that and make that more of a regular thing.
Thank you. I think having been in the church now for 30 years, what really impresses me and what I think works so well is just the way people are being inspired now by just the way the church operates, by Sari, the preaching. And the challenge, I think, is really to build on that and to sort of integrate it into people's lives and the way people interact with each other in the church and through all the activities of the church. And I suppose in that vein, the challenge is really, we were at the 9 o'clock service until my children went off to college. And now at the 11:15, I feel like there's still more that can be done to sort of bring together the different parts of the church, those with young families and those who have sort of transitioned out of that like we have, and maybe have a different perspective on what the role of the church is. And there I think it's really a question of dialogue and talking and sharing. So I think those would be the two things I would say. Thank you.
There are so many things that work wonderfully here. In addition to, I think, it's the open-heartedness and inclusiveness of the group. I think there are just so many different ways that different types of people and personalities can be engaged. Like if you're thoughtful, there's Bible study. If there's more prayerful, if you're more spiritual experiences. There's ways to engage the community if that's what really gets you going, or all those opportunities. They're all there for anybody. There's many ways you can experience Christianity here. In terms of, certainly the financial aspects are something that always need to be monitored carefully, and I think we have to be careful there. And it's not really a thing that I would say is wrong, but I hope we're always on the guard against complacency and don't take these things as just a given that, hey, we're good right now, so we'll always be good, we'll always be doing the right things. I think we're about as good as the last set of things that we've done. So making sure that we stay focused and stay thoughtful about what we should be doing with our time and talent.
I do think that outreach is a big strength of this community because we have so many different outreach opportunities here. But I think that a lot of it just happens in the background. I know I've run into people who have come to me and they've been members of this church for 5 years and they've said, gee, we should really get involved in that soup kitchen over in Silver Spring. I'm like, how do you not know about Shepherd's Table? So I think that there's one weakness is some of it is in communications and lay empowerment. Sometimes I run into somebody who's been here 10 years and they ask me if it's okay if they do a particular thing. And I think I'm not the authority, but of course you're a member of this parish. Of course you can do that. And so I think that we could do a lot better at communication about and empowerment so that people feel comfortable here and they treat it as their home where they can initiate things, do things, where they know what the limits, what they exactly have to ask the vestry for permission to do, because there are a few rules like that, like you can't fundraise without, requesting permission from the vestry. But that otherwise, there is a lot of things that parishioners can do and should do and don't have to ask for permission for. So that is making people feel at home here, empowered here. I think we could do a lot better job at that.
Well, I have the advantage of being last in this line of, yeah. But I want to say that I think what I said earlier, what inspires me is the engagement of this community in so many different ways, whether it's in faith or whether it's in action. I think that's really critical. I have been engaged in the last year. I'm very active in finding housing for our refugee family that's coming. I'm chairing that committee. And oh, by the way, I'll be looking for furniture very soon. We're hoping to have our family sometime in May, and we'll be coming out to you on that. But we have a lot of work to do to support that family. So there are lots of opportunities for us to get engaged and continue. So I think we're doing very well with that. I agree with others that being able to articulate that and invite people a little bit more to get engaged, and how we do that is a focus. I would say also I'd like to see more of the youth more involved in service. I think there's a lot, making sandwiches or more actively engaged in the different events that we have. We've done some of that. I just think we could make it a much more regular feature of what we do, so I would like to see that.
So in the interest of time, I won't speak for my candidates, but I imagine if you have a question for somebody, that they would hang around for a minute. But we are about to get infiltrated with all the church school kids being let out. So I just would like everyone to join me one more time in thanking all of the people. We have 13 spectacular people who have volunteered to serve this parish, and I just would like to thank them again.